BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. So yesterday on the channel, we were talking about the serial killer Paul Bernardo, and this is going to be kind of a continuation of that discussion. I'll post part one of that, like here, if you would like to get some more of the background information, but there are a few kind of points that I think we can use for our mini upload today. This is, of course, the shorter upload on the channel for this afternoon. Now, what we would say about Paul Bernardo is, just to give the absolute smallest introduction, so we don't have to go back through part one completely, is just going to be like, Paul Bernardo was also known as Paul Jason Teal. That was his alias. He was a serial killer in Canada, born on October 27th of 1964, and he is actually still incarcerated in Canada. He was better known as the Scarborough Rapist, and Scarborough is a suburb of Toronto, and he kind of operated at that time in 1987 to 1990. He ended up marrying a woman named Karla Homolka, and Karla and Paul kind of launched a sort of crime spree that involved sexual assaults, rapes, and of course murders. And she's really not just an accomplice in this. They even said in one of the documentaries that she might be more psychopathic than he is and showing a less of a regard for human life than he did. Even the rape of Karla's own sister, which not only did Paul Bernardo participate in, but Karla Homolka also participated in the rape of her sister. But those are the big things. I mean, they're also known as the schoolgirl killers, as well as the Barbie and Ken killers. They have a variety of nicknames. So, Paul Bernardo also became famous online because of a police interrogation video that we've had a little bit of a discussion about. Some of the other things, though, to kind of bring in some new material is, Paul Bernardo became a serial killer, but he was heavily influenced by the Bret Easton Ellis novel American Psycho that went on to become the movie with Christian Bale. And I found that very surprising. On the one hand, I mean, it's kind of somewhat to be expected. In the new millennium, we did see some copycat serial killers who learned things from Dexter, like the TV show with Michael C. Hall, because he actually provides not only about how to commit murders. What I saw watching Dexter, I watched all 8 seasons, the last 2 seasons were horrible, but they show you how to cover up the evidence. There was this documentary out there called Jimmy 9 Lives, where it's talking about like kind of like a mafia hitman sort of thing, and he says the kind of cold hard truth, that killing a person is easy. It's what you do with the body. And that's exactly what we saw. Excuse me again. That's exactly what we saw, like with the show Dexter. He talks so much about disposal. So when we're going to be looking at something like Paul Bernardo, I found it very odd that he would hold the book American Psycho as his Bible. And, it's like, I do confess, though, I haven't read the novel, but I saw the movie with Christian Bale at least 4 times. Like, that was definitely something that, stood out to me in my early 20s when I watched it for the first time. Because it's such an implausible kind of serial killer narrative. I mean, like, there's no possible way that that could ever possibly be successful. In the movie American Psycho, not to give away any spoilers, but Christian Bale just drops a chainsaw down a stairwell and it kills this prostitute, and then no one seems to notice, and supposedly he just covers up all the blood in it or something. And the point is, though, American Psycho, if I understood anything, that what the writer and the directors were trying to convey is, it's more of just a satire on how hollow society is and just how superficial people are. But I just think it was very odd that someone would kind of connect with that particular piece of literature and then think that this is something that they should be acting out. And for one of the reoccurring themes that we have on this channel is that I wish this was my own observation, but somebody was like, if somebody watches a movie or reads a book or plays a video game or hears a song and they want to go out and kill somebody because of it, that is no fault of the artist, that is no fault of the entertainer. That person has a pre-existing psychological issue. And as we mentioned before with Paul Bernardo, his biggest things were, so I believe anyway, he was verbally abused by his mother, he had a lack of bonding with his father, as well as when he found out, he learned when he was 16 years old that his father was not his indeed biological parent, and that his mother had conceived him in an extramarital affair. And that's what I called the shattering of the pillars of childhood. Trademark Black Box Radio. Thank you very much. Now, if you actually would like to see a film that is kind of similar to American Psycho, I highly recommend Vampire's Kiss with Nicolas Cage. I mean, most people know it because of some of the famous gag reel scenes, but it's like, I mean, only because American Psycho was set during the 1980s, right? But they filmed it, of course, in the late 90s, and it's, they're trying to recreate the 80s. But Vampire's Kiss, which is also about a guy going insane and killing people and even committing rape too, is also set in the 80s, but it's filmed at the contemporary time. So all of the things that they recreated for American Psycho are kind of filmed in its contemporary era. So, I mean, that was the biggest thing that stood out to me watching Vampire's Kiss after seeing American Psycho many times. And once again, that's with Nicolas Cage. The famous scene, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire, as he's running down the street. Yeah, okay. But I digress from that. So when we actually want to look at some other things with Paul Bernardo is, I cannot get over some of the connections and similarities that he shows with the case of Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, Paul Bernardo was an articulate individual, as was Jeffrey Dahmer, and we did a couple uploads last week about Dahmer, and the thing that I just see with both of them is they were both attractive individuals, they were both well-spoken, they both learned how to manipulate people. And from the early ages, Paul Bernardo was described as someone who was sociable, friendly, outgoing, happy child, all of that. He had cheeks that people would just want to pinch and such, and he went along with all of it. And I kind of put forward the hypothesis that his kind of mental state deteriorated because, as we mentioned, of verbal abuse and feeling betrayed by his mother, and most importantly, lack of bonding with the parents. That's the biggest thing that I see with serial killers. And that's exactly what we saw with Jeffrey Dahmer, is that he did not bond with his parents, and he may have inherited psychological issues from both of them genetically. But, I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer's mother was, of course, institutionalized at a point. She had her own set of mental issues, and there was a lot of, there were a lot of gaps in their kind of bonding period. And I just see so many similarities between Paul Bernardo and Jeffrey Dahmer. And that lack of bonding with parents to children, that's just kind of like creating the formula for being a serial killer, especially when the lack of bonding is partnered with a form of abuse. And it doesn't always have to be parental abuse. If you look at serial killers like Joel Rifkin, then the majority of the abuse that he experienced was because of bullying at school. But this all ties into something. It's rejection, and that's the biggest theme that we've been going with on this channel, about how rejection leads people to commit these heinous crimes. Elliot Rodger, the Santa Barbara shooter, Isla Vista, California, he was another example of that, someone who just felt rejected by everyone and everything, and that drove him to commit a mass shooting, as opposed to being a serial killer like Paul Bernardo, who was a rapist and a murderer. And then he joined in with somebody like Karla Homolka, who went on to become his wife, and she was also a rapist and a murderer. I mean, she sexually abused her own sister. They filmed it. Very disgusting individuals. But with Paul Bernardo is that he was convicted on at least 3 or 4 killings, but he raped more than 13 women, and then there were also 6 attempted cases of rape. So it's just like, he's an absolutely savage individual, and I don't mean that in a good way, like some people would say in the contemporary sense. No, they definitely would think that Paul Bernardo is somebody who is, a psychopath, because he shows no regard for human life, lack of human empathy. And the thing is, though, it is not unheard of for people to have a spouse that is going to participate with them in these types of things, and that only made the situation worse. I mean, enabling is one thing, but this is ridiculous, especially when you look at some other examples of this. Like, I was just on YouTube, and I saw one of my own uploads in the related section. It was on the serial killer Cathy Wood and her partner, Gwendolyn Graham, who murdered multiple people in a nursing home. It's like they find somebody, and these two people continue the destructive acts together. Sometimes you find examples of people like David Parker Ray, who was a serial killer down in Elephant Butte, New Mexico, and what he did was his partner, Cindy Hendy, was someone who would be more involved with kind of luring the girls in, kind of confining them, kind of just assisting. But with somebody like Karla Homolka, she was definitely participating in the acts with Paul Bernardo. And you do see this very frequently. Sometimes the partner is just the accessory. They are just the accomplice. And then other times they actually participate in the sex acts and the murders as well. And it's all very disgusting, but they're just different forms of disgust, really, and different forms of evil. But when we sort of say that, I mean, sometimes serial killers are referred to as monsters, and I've never really kind of accepted that too well. It's because it's like, they're not monsters, first and foremost. Like, Jeffrey Dahmer's nickname was even the Milwaukee Monster. These people are just mentally deranged individuals. They are still human, but they have some serious mental issues, and like, mental illness can't even describe it. They are deranged. But I guess that's going to wrap up our mini upload for today. I just think that the American Psycho connection to Paul Bernardo was very odd to me, that he would choose that one. Maybe in the book they got some different things in the movie, as they normally do. But the thing is, it's just that, as I just mentioned, it seems like a very implausible thing that would ever work in real life, like the way that the stuff was played out. I mean, absolutely, like, zero chance. I mean, and it's almost just kind of a matter of time before he got caught, if that's the thing that he would be wanting to use. And once again, I'd recommend the movie American Psycho, the movie Vampire's Kiss. They got some good resources about Paul Bernardo online, including his police interrogation, which I recommend as well. And I will post a link to the other upload that we had done on Paul Bernardo here on this channel, and also recommend that if you want to check out some of the things about Cathy Wood, as well as the David Parker Ray upload that we did was actually titled Cynthia Jaramillo, the Sex Torture Chambers, so we have some things on those as well. Well, that's all for me now, and once again, this is just the mini upload for the day. We'll have a bigger upload coming out later on, and until next time.